Hi, and today I want to explain a bit about the ego and what it is in terms of mindfulness and self-awareness. Now, often we hear the ego in sort of everyday terms, and Freud obviously used it in sort of this idea of a person's self-esteem, but in mindfulness and awareness, and particularly Eckhart Tolle uses it in his book The Power of Now. It explains how the ego is our false sense of self, and this is a perceived image and identification of who we are and who we think we are, but this isn't truly who we are. So our true selves and our true being is our awareness and who we are in the here and now, in the present moment. If we're in the past or the future, like I've talked about in previous videos, we are in our thoughts, and we are not our thoughts. They are part of us, but we are more than that. We are the awareness beyond our thoughts, and we are the presence in the here and now and how we experience life. That is who we truly are. And the ego, this false sense of self, comes from external identifications that we attach ourselves to create a me, a my story, I. All these sort of words are used when the ego is sort of talking, if you like, this self-identification with certain things. And this can cause us suffering because these identifiers can disappear and change, and that causes suffering to us because we have attached ourselves of who we are to them. So, for example, if you've attached yourself to a job, I am a chef, I am a lawyer, I live in this house, I have these good looks, I own this car. If you identify with those things, when they then go, if you lose your job, if you lose your house, suffering is involved, and often, obviously, those events will cause some suffering, but there is then the further suffering that is caused from identifying with them as part of who you are. An easy way of maybe explaining it is if you lose your job or your house, or it changes, even if you just change jobs from a chef to a writer, or you don't change who you are still you, even if those other things change. You have not lost who you are in essence, and that is the true you. But we identify ourselves with these things, and particularly also then with thoughts and emotions that have arisen from events in our past or things that might be about to happen, and this causes us even more suffering. And a really good way to explain this is with the proverb that is used in Buddhism of the two arrows, and that the first arrow is an event, maybe it's something you did or something that somebody did to you, and the suffering that caused, or it's an event that's about to happen, so that's again your thoughts, and this can cause suffering, it can hurt. But then the second arrow is our thoughts and emotions around that event. So if something happened in your past, the second arrow is the thoughts and emotions that you keep going back to, that keep you there, that keep you away from the present moment and your true self. Your thoughts and emotions that carry on within you, often anger and hurt, are very strongly identified with the ego and the false sense of self, because when something has happened to us, or our identity has been threatened or taken away from one of these external markers, the ego then, this second arrow is created by it, and we then have even more suffering because our thoughts and emotions continue to attach to this event and keep us in the past and in suffering. And so by identifying this ego, this false sense of self, and that what it is doing, and attaching this second arrow and these emotions to things, by recognizing that, we can begin to detach ourselves from it. If we start to have an emotion about a past event, or we start to think about it again, or we start to get angry if someone threatens the thing we believe in, and that we have to be right. That's another very big thing that Eckhart Tolle talks about, is the ego has a very strong sense of having to be right, that we can't be wrong, because that destroys a self-perceived false sense of self, of who we are. We have created an image of ourselves around being right, and if being right is taken away, even if we feel we still are inside, if someone disagrees with us and we don't fight it, the ego, this false sense of self, becomes incredibly threatened because it's what it has been built up on. So then that causes us even more suffering because our false sense of self is threatened, and then that brings up the emotions and we attach to those emotions, and so this cycle of these second arrows just come flying in and are even more painful than the event or thing that caused the first arrow. So by identifying that, by recognizing that that is the ego, that we are more, far more than those emotions and those events, and that our unlimited capabilities of who we are right now in the present moment and the things we can do beyond that false sense of self is so great, we can start to let go of the ego. We can start to become aware of it, aware that we're not our thoughts, aware that we're not our emotions. It doesn't mean getting rid of them and blocking them out. It means stepping back and being aware of them so that they don't consume us, that they don't write our history for us, that they don't write our lives and our futures for us. And by letting go of this, we can let go of that second arrow, of that second round of suffering that we can let go of because we have the power to, because it is our own thoughts and emotions, and we are not our egos. We are amazing beings in this here and now, and by letting go of that, we can begin to fully flourish and have an awareness and bring peace to our lives and to ourselves. So I hope that's a good little roundup of sort of what the ego is. I'll put a link below to the book The Power of Now. It's absolutely fabulous and goes into it in much more detail. And I'll see you guys soon.